Welcome to the Good Eggs of History podcast. Here we explore the more unknown historical rule breakers, the rebels, the brave, and the bonkers. I'm Hannah Shekel, and I'll take you on a journey to discover these absolute badasses. Now, I've got a little bit of a story time for you today. This episode is about the fairly unknown folk hero of Nice, Catherine Segurane. It's a wonderful story about how an ordinary washerwoman became the emblem of her city. She's called Catherine Segurane or Caterina Segurana, but I'm going to keep the first pronunciation for today. The city of Nice is a magical place. It's hard not to fall in love with the sweep of the bay, the peach and pastel buildings, the vibrant market, the wonderful relics from prehistoric to Roman. The locals, the Niçois, are fiercely proud people, and they have always retained a very distinct identity. The local dialect, Niçard, is still spoken, and the street signs in Vieux-Nice, the old town, have both French and Niçard names on. Our story begins in 1543. At the time, Nice wasn't part of France, nor would it be for another 300 years. It was a part of the House of Savoy. Now, the Duke of the House of Savoy, Charles III, married Beatrice of Portugal, tying them into being an ally of the long-chinned Habsburgs, my favourite inbred royal household, by the way. Francis I, King of France, and Suleiman the Magnificent of the Ottoman Empire had allied together against Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, head of the Habsburg household. This coalition was unprecedented, as it was the first major Christian and Muslim alliance, at a time when ideological lines had been very strictly drawn. In 1947, Carl Jacob Burckhardt referred to it as the sacrilegious union of the lily and the crescent, no doubt a sentiment many felt at the time. The Franco-Turkish forces were led by François de Bourbon and Hayreddin Barbarossa. They boasted 150 galley ships packed with 30,000 soldiers and cannon. Now, Nice isn't a big city. There was a castle and a citadel perched on top of a steep hill, surrounded by round-turreted curtain walls, bordered on one side by the River Paillon and the port on the other. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any mention of what size the Niçois forces were, but the sources agree that things were not looking rosy for the city. It was besieged, it was battered with cannonballs, and they were rapidly running out of both morale and hope. Catherine Segurane steps forward. She was a washerwoman who would do all the laundry in the unpredictable waters of the Paillon. Now, I don't know if you've ever imagined 16th century washing, but it was a process that literally took days. The big wash, la grande bouée, took place over 3 days. Purgatory, or purgatif, the first day, involved soaking of stains. The second day was enfer, hell, which involved bleaching in something like lye or gorse ash. And the final day was paradis, paradise, which was supposedly the easiest day of scrubbing and rinsing. Doesn't sound particularly easy to me. To do all this by hand meant the washerwomen were actually very physically strong. If you imagine wringing a bedsheet tied around a post out by hand and getting all the water out, then you'll start to have a feel of what they were able to do. They also enjoyed a level of autonomy and freedom that other women didn't have, as they made their own income and they travelled freely around the city without an escort. It was a community of spirited, strong women who were a crucial part of the life of Nice. While there's a lot of conjecture about how events unfolded in the siege of Nice, or even if Catherine was a real woman, she is an important part of the history of Nice. I've written a fictional account of how the siege of Nice might have occurred. While it may not be totally accurate, I hope you'll enjoy it. The cannonball had careened past her head before she even realised. The guard behind her wasn't so lucky. She grimaced, flicking the fleshy debris off her apron onto the floor. At least it was a quick, if a messy end. She'd tell his widow tomorrow. There would be a tomorrow. Peering over the ramparts, even she could see the situation was getting desperate. The French and Turkish forces were true soldiers, a trained army. Siege ladders were being forced up against the already cannon-battered walls, and she could now see the detail on their twisted faces clearly as they began streaming upwards towards her. And then she heard a shrill yell to her left. Suzanne pitched backwards, blood gushing from a gorge freshly cut across her shoulder and into the side of her neck. She had been a constant companion down the banks of the Paillon, always a source of juicy gossip and crude jokes, her vitality as strong as her lie-worn forearms. Rushing forward, Catherine briefly cradled her neck, her hands and wrists smearing with blood. There was nothing she could do. Suzanne was dead before she had hit the ground. How dare they? How dare they slay such a dynamic, spirited woman? Setting her jaw, she whipped around to face the marauders reaching over the walls of her beloved city. Her grip tightened around the wooden handle of her laundry bat, veins standing out across her weathered skin. This was her Nisa. Hers. Blood boiling, she let out a heart-stopping shriek that caused everyone in the area, friend and foe alike, to cringe. The top of the Franco-Turkish fleur-de-lis and crescent standard rose above the walls. While she was no expert in warfare, she knew the meaning of another country planting their flag high over your city. It was yours no more, and would become a strange land full of sorrow and strangers. This could not be allowed to happen. Adrenaline coursed through her body as she dropped her laundry bat to the ground with a clatter and wrapped both of her hands around the flagpole. Years of wringing linen had prepared her well for this moment. With a sharp wrench, she ripped the standard right out of the soldier's grasp, who registered the wild-eyed, robust Niçoise above him. She grinned madly, letting out the most unhinged laugh he had ever heard, and abruptly used the other end of the pole to shove him backwards. Seeing her jubilantly waving the flag, her sisters, the washerwomen, her lavandière, rushed forwards, bellowing their own war cries. She'd never been so proud of these fierce, determined women as she was right now. True warriors down to their bones. The fervour with which they attacked the enemy was impressive, and certainly the invaders had never seen such ferocity from women before. But it wasn't enough. They still kept coming. She shot desperate looks around as the enemy came closer to overrunning the ramparts, despite the best efforts of her sisters. They needed a miracle. They needed something drastic. Something unexpected. Well, there's only one thing to do, she determined, gathering up her blood-spattered, stained hem. I guess I'll have to show my arse. The story of Catherine repelling the invaders by mooning them is well known, and one I absolutely love. She disappears from the story after that, and while the citadel was saved, the rest of the city was plundered. Still, it remained unconquered, and remained out of French hands for another 300 years. Catherine has become the emblem of Nice, of the rebellious, fierce spirit that the Niçois still display to this day. Real or not, she is a good egg because she displayed courage and a remarkable presence of mind, even while potentially staring death in the face.
Thank you for listening. I'm Hannah Shekel. If you'd like to join in the conversation, join me on Instagram at Hannah Shekel, Hotel Alpha November November, Alpha Hotel, Sierra Hotel, Echo Kilo Lima Echo. I love me some NATO alphabet. There'll be photos, behind the scenes, sneak peeks and more. Please join me next time to enjoy the next Good Egg.